In today's video, let's talk about barrel length when it comes to slow pitch softball bats. So I've got the 4 most common barrel lengths that you'll see in slow pitch softball bats: 12 inches, 12 3/4, 13, and 13.5. Now, you will find some bats occasionally at 11.5. I think some of like the specialty companies like Anarchy or Monsta will make some of those. And you'll find 14-inch barrels occasionally, but those are kind of pretty extreme outliers. So today we'll just focus on 12, 12 3/4, 13, and 13.5. So if you're new here, I'm Dan Blewett. I'm a former pro baseball player, and I also made a big guide to slow pitch softball bats. I'll link to that in the description below. So if you want to know all the different things about composite versus alloy, 1 versus 2-piece, different weights, end loaded versus balanced, all that stuff, you'll find that very comprehensive video in the description. So in today, let's just hone down on barrel length, why you should care, why does it matter, what's the difference in feel. So there's basically 3 characteristics that we're going to talk about here. Number 1 is the size of the sweet spot, right? That's an obvious one. Bigger barrel has more room for sweet spot. Number 2 is the whippiness of the bat. And this is, not a super scientific term, but basically all bats will flex as you explode through the zone. The barrel will lag behind and the handle will flex a little bit. When you have a longer handle and a proportionally shorter barrel, you'll get more whip and flex because the handle is skinnier for a longer proportion of the bat. And then number 3 is overall proportion of weight distribution. So with a longer barrel, you're going to have the weight distribution more evenly spread out compared to a smaller bat. So let's start there. So let's use these extremes, and the extremes are the best way to show this anyway. So this Boomba Pure is a 12-inch barrel, and this Worth Bedlam is a 13.5. And you can see there's a pretty big difference, right? So if you look at the connection point here on the Boomba versus the Worth, you can see where the barrel starts to really thickly taper on the Worth way sooner than on the Pure. Overall, because this Boomba Pure has a 12-inch barrel, the handle is much skinnier, much longer, which shifts more of the total weight towards the end of the bat, right? The barrel is a smaller proportion. The barrel concentrates more weight in a smaller package. And so this bat will feel more end loaded, number 1. Even if it's a balanced bat, which this one is, it's still going to feel more end loaded because more of the weight is towards the end. Number 2, the handle is skinnier, longer, which means the barrel will lag a little more and have more of that whippy feel that some of us can experience when you swing hard enough. So this will feel whippier. It will feel more end loaded. And the other thing about this smaller barrel bat is it'll just have a smaller sweet spot. Now with the 13.5-inch barrel, you're not going to experience as much whippy feeling. This is going to feel more like swinging a pipe, and that's how I experience them. You'll feel it almost sort of like drag a little bit through the air just because it's thicker, longer. So there seems to be like, I'm not saying air resistance is really playing a factor, but it just feels clunkier going through the air. And that's not to say you can't hit the ball really hard with these bigger barrel bats, because you absolutely can. It just moves more as like one solid piece, like you're swinging a pipe. But the positive trade-off is that more weight is distributed closer to your hands. So these can feel a little bit more balanced. Of course, they can always add more weight to the end to sort of even that out. And also you're going to get a much bigger sweet spot, right? Now that extra 1.5 inches is relatively significant if you're a person that mishits the ball a lot, right? So you'll get more sweet spot performance down here. Towards the end, it's not going to make a difference on any of these bats, but you'll get more towards the trademark. So to summarize, with the biggest barrels, the 13.5 and the occasional 14-inch, it's not going to feel very whippy. The weight might feel more evenly distributed. It might swing a little bit more like a pipe, even though the handle's skinny, and you're going to get much bigger sweet spot down the trademark. So if you tend to jam yourself a lot, you'll get a little bit extra boost from a bigger barrel. Real quick, do you want to support my channel and get access to hundreds of member-only videos? If so, click the join button that you'll find right below and learn more about becoming a channel member. So now we've talked about the extremes. What about most bats that are somewhere in the middle? And this is the case. Most bats are 12 3/4 inches like this Easton Kapow, or 13 inches like this DeMarini Flipper. So just like everything else in life, there's a bell curve, and most bats on the market are 12 3/4 or 13 inches. So if you're like, hey, I don't know which of these extremes that I want, just go with a 12 3/4 or a 13-inch. You'll feel a little difference in a 13-inch versus a 12 3/4, especially if you use a 1-piece. These are both 2-piece bats, so they're going to have a little extra whippiness because of the handle connection is always just a little bit less stiff than a 1-piece bat is more stiff as a whole. But in general, if you like to be somewhere in the middle, or you don't have a strong preference for barrel lengths and you tend to get sweet spot a reasonable amount of the time, 13-inch or 12 3/4 is going to be totally fine for you. And you'll still get some of the whippy feeling, not quite as much as the 12-inch barrel, and you'll get a little extra oomph on some of those ones where you jam yourself. All right, so overall recommendations on barrel length for slow pitch softball bats. Number 1, 12 inches is a pretty big outlier on the market. So if you're seeking out a 12-inch barrel, you already know who you are. I'm not really talking to the masses in general, right? So if you like the smaller barrel, you like the smaller sweet spot, you like the more whippy feeling, then go for it. You're just not gonna have as many options on the market. 13.5 inch. If you're a person that doesn't barrel the ball up consistently and you tend to jam yourself a lot, this is gonna be a better choice for you. It's not gonna have the whippy feeling. At times it might feel like it drags through the zone, feels like a pipe a little bit. But if you tend to hit the ball all over the bat and you tend to jam yourself a lot, you'll get a little more oomph from a 13.5. And for everyone else who gets sweet spot a decent amount of the time and doesn't have strong preferences, just take your pick of 13-inch or 12.5 or 12 3/4 inch barrels and just go for it. Don't worry about it too much. Your bigger choice is probably whether you want a 1-piece for a little more stiff feel or a 2-piece for a little more whippy feel. Those are really the bigger decisions when you're buying a bat, in my opinion. So leave a comment below. What's your experience with barrel length? Did I miss anything? Is there anything you want to contribute to the conversation? Leave it in the comment section below. Thanks again for watching. Subscribe if you haven't, and you'll find all the bats I showed in this video in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you here in the next one.